Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated legacy action. Today we're playing a weird little Rug Delver deck that I saw that was really interesting and a bit different, so I thought I'd give it a little show on the channel. So we've got some of the things you'd expect, you know, a bunch of cantrips, a bunch of counter spells, some lightning bolts, that sort of jazz. But then we've kind of got this weird package here with Uros and Minsc Boos. So I thought I would give this a whirl. Our threat package is 4 Dragon's Rage Channeler, which is just an essential, lets you churn through your deck, lets you set things up. But we're not playing Murktide Regents, instead we've got these Tarmogoyfs. So we can always play these for 2 mana. We don't have to worry about graveyard hate. And this counts both graveyards, so if our graveyard's getting wiped, it's still going to be a reasonable size a lot of the time. And then that's where our threats get really interesting. So we've got these 2 Uros, which are obviously, you know, a staple control finisher. That also give you some card advantage. So this is going to be our thing that we're doing in our graveyard instead of Murktide, which is quite an interesting one. It definitely wins a fair amount by pulling you ahead with card advantage and that sort of thing. So I'm interested to see how it plays here. I've not really played Delver decks with Uro in before, which is why I was so keen to try this one. We've then got some Minsc Boos, just a bit more expensive than a lot of the threats you'd see in Delver, but does some serious work. And sometimes you see this in the sideboard of Rug Delver decks. It's sort of fallen out of favour a little bit lately, but still a very strong card. Then we've got a couple of Borrowers, which can be threats, but they're just part of our interaction package, along with Unholy Heats and Lightning Bolts. And we do have a Spell Pierce hidden away here. And we've got more cantrips than you'd normally expect. So we only got 1 Lorien Revealed, but we've got a couple of extra Preordains snuck in here. So these are more sorceries for our Delirium count. And we're going to have to churn through our deck. But what I will say is interesting is this list I saw that went 5-0, it was a 61 card deck, which is kind of interesting. I'm curious what the reasoning on the 61st card is. Maybe it was a Lorien Revealed. Again, another sorcery we can put in. And I think we've got 19 lands here. So normally you'd see 18 from a Delver deck. So maybe the 19th card, the 19th land is the 61st card because we've got a slightly higher curve. So maybe they just wanted to add in a little bit of extra mana. It's interesting. In terms of our mana, we have a basic forest and a basic island. So it's probably the basic forest that's the extra card there. But we've got, you know, some reasonable green cards we're trying to cast here. So it makes some sense. We've obviously got fetch lands, no room for Mystic Sanctuary. We've got 2 Volks, 2 Trops, and a Taiga, along with our 4 Wasteland package. So yeah, that's the main deck. Sideboard-wise, just standard things you would see in Delver, you know, like carpets, blasts of various descriptions, some graveyard hate of different kinds. Tsabo's Web is an interesting one against like the lands deck. A Meltdown, you know, pretty par for the course. Force of Negation, but more counter magic for combo decks, again, pretty usual. Maddening Hex is the only one that's a bit more unusual, but this is going to be good against some of the control decks, and obviously some of the combo decks. And because we're slightly higher in our curve, it means we're more easily able to cast this Maddening Hex than you would in some of the other Delver builds. Not convinced on Maddening Hex in my experience, but we'll try it today. So yeah, this is the deck I saw. You know me, I love a bit of Rug Delver. So let's just jump into it. Remember to like and subscribe, and let's see if Minsc Boo really are the timeless heroes we need. If you're looking to play Legacy on MTGO like me, why not try Card Hoarder? They're a rental service that I personally use, and I found them better than other rental services that I've used in the past. So why not give them a try? Right, we have no lands on our opening hand, so we're going to send this one right back. We have the same problem yet again. So once again, I'm going to have to send this hand back, and we're starting on 5 with our first round. Not how I wanted to start this league, but these things happen. Alright, so this is probably the hand we're going to be keeping. We need to make some decisions here. So Channeler, Bauble is good. I don't really want to risk not having lands, which means we get to keep one of these. So it's probably going to be the Brainstorm we keep. I think that's just the most intrinsically useful card given our low resources. I don't want to lose our blue mana to a Wasteland, so we're probably playing out this Taiga first. That's Bauble here. A Daze. That is a low resource piece of interaction that we can use. We don't get to use it this turn if we draw with the Bauble though, which is kind of annoying. So we'll put that on top still, and we won't draw with the Bauble until our opponent's turn. Like, we're going to have to get this Dragon's Rage Channeler to do a bunch of work for us. A Broadside Bombardiers, okay, so we're probably looking at some kind of prison style deck, or could be goblins. Alright, feels like goblins. Okay, human. Okay, could be initiative. So this is not really going to help us out in terms of this Daze that we've got. And we had no way of binning it after that. Oh, okay, so this is fine. But the problem here is we didn't lead off on this to play around Wasteland, and now we've kind of tricked ourselves a bit here. Alright, so I think we will go and get ourselves a Volcanic here. And we're trying to flip our Channeler here. That's why we're brainstorming now. We don't want this land, let's go into our graveyard. Tarmogoyf and a bunch of Wastelands. These are fine things to have. So, put a Wasteland on top and an island. So next time we draw a Wasteland, but we're going to play a Wasteland anyway, and then we can play the island. That seems reasonable. And we just get in for 1 here, and hopefully nothing too devastating happens this turn. And then we can just play the Wasteland game. Another Cavern of Souls, also on human. Alright, nothing devastating happened. This means our run of Wastelands should be pretty effective here. Let's snap down one of these. The one with the art I recognise from back in the day. Let's crash with our puny little 1/1. But then we get to make a friend for him who is a little bit larger. Good old Tarmogoyf. Every time I play Tarmogoyf, I'm always impressed by it. Like, it's never like the best thing ever, but it's always like better than I expect it to be. Alright, City of Traitors. Alright, so we can hit the Cavern of Souls to take off Coloured Mana, or we can hit the City of Traitors. I think I'm going to hit the Cavern of Souls, because that just makes our... Alright, our opponent's had enough. So, they're putting these on human, and they have a Broadside Bombardier. So I'm imagining that our opponent is red-white initiative with Broadside Bombardiers. That's sort of ballpark. So, I think this Hydroblast is going to be something we're interested in. And when it comes to some of the other bits and pieces we have access to, there's some choices here. So these cards have text in this matchup. So maybe we need to Force of Negation like an early lock piece if our opponent's got them, like a Chalice or whatever. And Meltdown is something that we can then use after the fact to hit those. But if they've got... They could be that human deck that runs the Urza Sagas as well. So there's a lot of ebb and flow to what we could have. I think for this game, I'm tempted to just take out our Dazes, because they're not going to be very good on the draw here. And then we can board in these. And then we just need to find something for this Hydroblast. That's reasonable. I think we probably need to trim on some of these cantrips, to be honest. How do I feel about Spell Pierce here? Maybe I'll keep in a Daze. They are trying to cast 4 mana creatures. So maybe we do want a couple of Dazes here, and it is the Preordains that go, because they get locked under a Chalice a fair bit. And we don't have the time to be like rifling through our deck to find stuff, because we just need to stop our opponent from battering us. I like the Minsc Boo as an instant speed way, well, not instant speed, as a way that we can play a thing that immediately can take the initiative if necessary, and it also can be some removal for bigger things. Alright, let's try this. Delver traditionally is pretty good against the initiative decks, because you make a threat and then you stop their things from mattering. So we have a turn 1 threat. We have an answer for a Chalice if our opponent's keeping based on that. We have some removal that might kill some of their guys. I think I will keep this one. I'm not enamored with it, but I will accept it. Our opponent kept quite a slow hand last time, so... Okay. So we want to get ourselves... Do we want to get something that plays around Blood Moon? No, because we need to play our Dragon's Rage Channeler. So this is locking us into the Volcanic here. We now have a counterspell though, so I feel a lot safer about doing this. We're not just going to get Blood Mooned in the heart. We can play around Blood Moon better than most Delver decks, because we have 1 forest in our deck as well as the island, and we're not playing a Murktide region that we need to cast under a Blood Moon. So, what have you got, opponent? Fable of the Mirrorbreaker. This is definitely worth counterspelling. It's just an incredibly strong thing. The only issue here is that takes away our Ponder. Kind of a big deal. But how are we going to beat this Fable of the Mirrorbreaker? Because this is so much value in such a tight package. I think we do have to counterspell this. Hopefully this Dragon's Rage Channeler will find us some joy. Alright, that is what I would describe as some joy. Okay, I definitely wanted a cantrip there. We can flip our little friend. So we've got 2 types here. So we cast this. We're not going to flip this turn unless we cast multiple things. We'd have to cast this into a Ponder this turn. So if we are holding up the Lightning Bolt, I think we're just brainstorming in our opponent's turn in case we need to respond to something. I think that's probably where I'm best at using our resources right now. Alright, so we're probably going to see some kind of large creature this turn, like a Chaos of Chaos Adventurer or Touch of the Spirit Realm. That's an interesting one. Alright, I'm going to fire off this Brainstorm now. At least we get a little bit more surveil advantage. A Bauble, that can go into the graveyard. We don't want that. Force of Will that we don't get to use, so I guess we're probably sending that to the bottom. Then we'll keep this fetch land. Yeah, we really don't have anything going on here. So this Touch of the Spirit Realm is going to remove our creature, but they did lose a Seat of Traitors to do so. But now we don't have anything going on. The other option there we had was to Lightning Bolt and take one more card, but I don't hate having this, which takes the other card anyway. Whereas we might need to fire off double bolts to try and strip our opponent of something scary. So a Lotus Petal, sure. And nothing. So we are cracking this. And I think we want to just get... I think we want to get a red source so we can at least play double lightning bolts down the line. And blue is the more important colour than the green here. So I think we are on the Volk. Okay. So we can melt down this Lotus Petal if we think that's going to be useful. Let's have a look at the top card of our opponent's library and see if that gives us any indication of whether or not we should be hitting this Lotus Petal. A Solitude. I don't care about the Solitude. Kind of worried about like a big, you know, one of their big guys. But does that mean I'm supposed to just fire off this Meltdown now? Like, we don't have anything going on. We do need to buy some time. I'm not a fan of this play, but I think given the way that our opponent's been playing and their hands looks quite slow, taking out this Lotus Petal is reasonable. Alright, so we get a card off of this. A Force of Will that we can't use. Excellent. But maybe by getting rid of that Lotus Petal, we might have bought the time to find a blue card to go with this. Okay, a Hydroblast. I think we're just holding this up. If we drew a cantrip then, I think we're probably just keeping the cantrip in hand as our blue card anyway, because there are definitely some things we don't want introduced into this game right now. We've got a lot of damage to creatures available. Okay, so there is the Cavern of Souls. That makes our Force of Will a lot worse. An Archon of Emeria. You can have that. We can Lightning Bolt it down. Right, our opponent's got 4 cards in hand. A Ponder. So this one is one I'm happy to cast. I think we'll cast it off of a red source so we can play like something like a Tarmogoyf. Because getting a creature on board is really important right now. Brainstorm is good. Uro is something we can start doing from next turn, and we've got the land to work with it. So I think we're going to go Brainstorm on the bottom, then the Uro, then this forest. This allows us to play this forest now. Not that we're really going to need the mana for anything, but it's there. And then we can play Uro next turn, and then we can try and put it into play. And that should be bigger than a lot of their creatures when they first arrive. But we know there's a Solitude over there. So we're going to have to counter that. Alright. Assyrian Spirit Guide. This isn't even worth a Lightning Bolt, in my opinion. So let's fire this off. Green, blue, and 1. Let's get some life going. So we're basically saving our Force of Will for their Solitude, which is the plan here. So that'd be a nice 2-for-2 trade that keeps us with an Uro. Now, if they've got multiple white pieces of removal, then the Uro is going to look a little bit worse. But it gets card advantage on the way in and out anyway, so it's not the worst. A Lotus Petal, and nothing. Alright. So let's pop our graveyard out. We have to make some decisions about what we are exiling here. Green, green, blue, blue. Okay, so we've got multiple artifacts. We can get rid of one of those. We've got multiple instants. And we actually got multiple sorceries for once as well. So we can get rid of those. We've got multiple lands. So we can get rid of one of those. Our opponent has a land and an artifact in their graveyard for the purposes of Tarmogoyf as well. So I guess we get rid of the Force of Negation here. And then we just hold up this Force and try and use it to get rid of this Solitude that might be coming down. Okay, so now we are back to a super full grip. So if we get to untap with our Uro in play, I think we win this game. But that's not the easiest ask. I think our opponent's waiting to draw the extra mana source to just hard cast this Solitude. So we're hoping they don't draw a Cavern of Souls for the Solitude. It's interesting they played the Spirit Guide rather than using it to guarantee a hard cast Solitude. A Fury. Okay. So this is going to put 4 damage onto our little Uro friend. They're going to flicker this with a Touch of the Spirit Realm. They are indeed. We don't get to counterspell this. But Uro is going to the graveyard rather than going into exile. So I don't think we fight this one. We already have some pretty clean answers to the Uro anyway. Sorry, to the Fury. And then we can just redeploy the Uro. Pretty sharpish, actually. Alright, so we have a Dragon's Rage channel. I would like to get this into play first, so let's get this. Then we will Lightning Bolt this Fury. I don't want to Daze, not really. Just fuel out that Uro instead. And then we can fire off Brainstorm here to get a little bit deeper again. Make sure that we have loads of food for Uro. Okay, a Minsc Boo I like. I'll take that. Lots of Force of Wills, which may or may not be useful. We're also shields down on the Pyroblast this turn. Sorry, the Hydroblast. I was hoping to find a mana source here. So we're probably putting the Force of Will on top. We're unlikely to need 2 Force of Wills in 1 turn cycle. Then we'll put the Minsc Boo. And then we'll pass. Yeah, not finding a land there was a little bit annoying. But we've got a Force of Will. Potentially 2 Force of Wills if things really go wrong for us. We know they've got Solitude. An Anointed Peacekeeper. Do I care about this Anointed Peacekeeper as much as I care about the Solitude? We have some Force of Wills here. We will just Unholy Heat this, but that will cost us 3 mana if we want to Unholy Heat it. But they could just name Uro. Yeah, I think we just allow this one. We can technically ping off. Okay, they just looked at our hand and were like, yeah, that's stacked, which is fair enough. I think I did that the other day on turn 2. And looked at someone's hand, it was so stacked, I thought I can't win. Alright, so we got a win on the board for round 1. Let's go to round 2. Do I keep Island Preordain? It's reasonable. We've got some Dazes to fall back on. I think this is acceptable, but I'm not excited about it. Once Upon a Time. Okay, this gives us an indication that we're likely to be playing against some kind of Cradle Control or possibly Cloud Post. Those are the only 2 like major decks you see with Once Upon a Time these days. Revealed and Elvish Reclaimer. Underground Mortuary. Yep. I think my read is pretty accurate there. So, surveilled away a Noble Hierarch. So it's back over to us. Now we know what they're playing. Okay, I think playing Channeler into Mishra's Bauble is just way better. These decks tend not to run any Wastelands anymore. So we're going to play into them. Yep. Putting a creature into the graveyard is a type that's sometimes a little bit tricky. We'll fire this off now in case our opponent is playing a build with Bowmasters. We want to make sure we get our draw before they can put a Bowmaster into play. Even though we do have the Daze for it. Let's see what we find here. A Force of Will, okay. So we could be tempted to Force of Will pitching Daze on this Reclaimer, because Reclaimer is kind of some amount of nonsense, really. Alright, they've played a Forest, and they're going for the Reclaimer. Considering we don't have any removal, I'm inclined to fire this off. The Spell Pierce can catch the Natural Order in a few turns' time. I do want another land, so I'll leave this on top. So the land, okay, I don't care about this that much. Like, it makes our Daze worse, but having Daze and Spell Pierce to fight the Natural Order is kind of where I want to be. So I think we crack this. That gives us Delirium. We would like a green source here. And I think I'm going to cast a Preordain. Brainstorm isn't that exciting. I can just go into the graveyard. Looking for lightning bolts and that sort of thing. Unholy Heat, that is exactly that sort of thing. We don't really want the Uro, so we get to put this on the bottom of our library, and then we get to put the Unholy Heat on the top of our library. That's a pretty good turn for us there. And we get to bash for 3, and we can start the beats going. Our opponent can have 4 mana, so they could do like a Natural Order for Atraxa, but we have Daze and Spell Pierce available. So if we get given an option to use this Daze effectively, I will take that option. Alright, a Collector Oof. We don't care about Oof. And they've got 1 mana to pay around Daze anyway. A Bajuka Bog. That is something that is a little bit annoying for us. It is what it is at the end of the day. I'm attacking with a Hierarch. Do I want to kill this Hierarch? I think so. I want to start getting through our deck here. This can go into the graveyard, I think. Although, if we keep this on top, we get to play Tarmogoyf and hold up Spell Pierce Daze. Yeah, sure. I'll take that. That seems reasonable. Go and get ourselves a Volcanic here. Let's go green, red, make Tarmogoyf. Good old-fashioned Tarmogoyf. We're not attacking with our Channer into their 2-2. So hitting the Noble Hierarch there makes our Daze better. So We are taking one of their things, but if we don't take that, maybe we have a dead card in hand. Now we have a card that is more likely to be live. So we're kind of trying to make sure that the limited resource we do have can stretch a bit further. A Wasteland. Okay, our opponent is on a Wasteland build. Interesting. So we're probably going to lose our Tropical Island here. Although if they were going to do that, they probably want to do it then. So it feels like they've got an Endurance here. So if they get rid of these... okay. So I'm going to attack with a Tarmogoyf. They can play an Endurance here. Shrink our graveyard. So they've got instant creature here. Yep, so there's the Endurance. They can target us. I want to get rid of this first, do they? So we will float a mana. We'll cast a Lightning Bolt here. So they're going to have 3 types. This is going to be a 3/4 anyway. So we Lightning Bolt this guy. An Uro. That's not really going to be very helpful for us right now because we're about to lose our graveyard. So we'll put this into the graveyard. And then I will... Would I like to keep our green source around? I think I would like to keep our green source around here. So I think we will target our own Daze here to save our Tropical Island. Get our Surveil off and then pay for the Daze. We're kind of relying on our Spell Pierce to do this work for us, so I'm just going to put that in the graveyard. So I'll pay for this Daze. I'll die. So whichever... So we're going to have a Tarmogoyf that's big enough to not die to this Endurance. Sure, they've left their own graveyard, which makes sense, because they have things like Fiend Artisan, and whichever one... They're obviously targeted before we started fighting over the stack anyway. But before, they might have been tempted to take their own because they have more types in, but I think they correctly identified that they needed to take our graveyard out there. Alright, they're going for the aggressive line of taking the damage here. I'm going to leave this Tropical Island in hand so that we can't get Wastelanded off of Tarmogoyf that we draw. Alright, there is a buy from our opponent. They're going to attack us for 4 and then cast a Natural Order. Feels like one of the things they could have left in their hand at this point. They know that we don't have Forcible Blue card. Alright. There's the Natural Order. This is the situation we've been playing around this entire time. Uro. We can cast the Uro next turn, but we want it in the graveyard anyway, so let's just chuck it in there. Spell Pierce, pretty good. Now we have a 4/5 Tarmogoyf. A Brazen Borrower. That's not totally unhelpful. We will play this out now, because we can use this to just make a threat. So we're crashing for 5 this turn, and then we can crash for 8 next turn. So if all we need to do is get them to crack a fetch land or us to flip our channeler. We could also just draw an artifact like a Mishra's Bauble. A Fiend Artisan. Okay, that's a 6/6. That is bigger than what we have going on. So I will aggressively petty theft this and get into our deck a little bit more with the Surveil trigger here. A Brainstorm. That is a very hard one to pass up, isn't it? I think that is an above average draw, but I'm going to put it in the graveyard still. We're looking for Unholy Heat type jazz here. Alright. That's not what we wanted. Maybe we're supposed to keep that Brainstorm. So we crash for 5 here. There is already a land, creature, instant land. So playing this land out and cracking it wouldn't make this guy into... It wouldn't increase our damage count. Whereas if we keep this in hand, we might be able to make our opponent Wasteland, thinking it's better than it necessarily is. They might also play around something in our hand. Alright, so they crack that fetch. They have cracked that fetch when we have a Borrower on board. So that has to mean they have, like, something pretty potent here. Alright, this looks like a Natural Order. That would do it. So this is going to be an Atraxa in this current situation. That makes sense. There it is. Okay. What do they want here? They've also shown us that they're playing White Splash, which is sometimes a bit unusual. That's good to know. We also know they have a Fiend Artisan in hand right now. Yeah, I think we should have kept that Brainstorm. Trying to power out more cards into the Uro. But we can cast the Brainstorm anyway. Okay, they kept Green Sun Zenith, Orcish Bowmasters, Windswept Heath, and Swords to Plowshares. And we'll leave the Fiend Artisan because we know they've got one in hand. Okay, so we need to draw another Brazen Borrower here. Force of Will. If the next card of our library is a blue card, then the Brainstorm still wouldn't have done enough for us there. So we can attack, they gain 7. Things get bad for us. Yeah, I think we've probably lost this one. We'll play this out so we can hard cast a Force of Will if we draw a land. But I suspect our opponent is just going to finish us off pretty quick time here. There's Windswept Teeth. They're going to bash us for 7. I'll take half our life total. That puts them to 10 life. But they do have a blocker. Because Vigilance, quite the keyword. So it's going to be the Bowmasters taking out our Brazen Borrower or our Dragon's Rage Channeler. Or it could be the Fiend Artisan. Alright, it's going to be the Fiend Artisan. They can Bowmasters and Plow here. So they just get to cast so many spells. And we just didn't quite get to turn the corner. To close it before they could turn the corner. Alright. So if we'd have kept that Brainstorm and used it, it wouldn't have actually got us anywhere in the end. Which is nice to know. I don't think we're winning this game now, though. I think it just slipped out of our grasp. Just enough that I'm willing to scoop this one up. Close. Very close. So Grafdigger's Cage stops their Green Sun Zenith in the natural order, so I'd very much like to have access to that. As for these other cards, they're not that impressive. So Force of Negation does counter the one big thing that is going to like break the game open. And Dazes are pretty poor post-board. Or well, against their deck with all their mana dorks and stuff. But then this leaves us needing one additional card. We could play something like a single Surgical Extraction if we're worried about a certain card that they draw multiple copies of, but this will be card disadvantage. I don't really want to do that. It can sometimes be like a debuff to their creature in mid-combat if they've got a Fiend Artisan, but again, I don't think that's worth doing. I don't think it's worth playing this to strip out the things either, so I think that leaves us with 1 Daze here. I would like to have an additional removal spell or like a 2-mana sweeper, like Rough Tumble type thing, but we just don't have access to that here. We will keep the Spell Pierce in purely because it hits Green Sun and Natural Order, and those are basically the 2 best spells in our opponent's deck, so seems worthwhile to keep them around. Alright, once again, we are not able to deploy a land, so let's mulligan this one. Yeah, this one is kind of where we want to be, I think. We'll keep this. I don't really want this basic, even though our opponent does have Wasteland. I think we don't want to get caught out doing that, because we have to get a non-basic anyway, so we'd rather have 2 non-basics than 1 basic and 1 non-basic, because then we just get cut off of colours very easily. Alright, in comes the Volcanic Island, turns on our Daze, lets us play the Channeler. Let's get our Bauble going. So this is going to... Okay, this is the exact sort of card we want in this matchup. Our opponent can play Thought Seizes, so I'm not going to crack this just yet. I'm going to draw the card in our turn. Some sort of mana dork. Some sort of mana dork. Do we want to... I kind of want to see what's on top of our library first. No, we'll have a look at theirs. Once Upon a Time. Okay. I think we let this go. Like, we can always use the Daze for the Force of Will rather than the trying to actually leverage the Daze as a spell. Alright. There is no Delver in our Delver deck. So... Alright. So we can just hit their things here. That seems like a thing I like to do. Right, let's have a look. This will be the 3rd type. We don't really want this land. That can go into the graveyard. We will get rid of their other resource here. But we're not really making huge inroads in the game. We're definitely stalling our opponent here. But if this flipped this turn into a 3-3, then I'd like that position a lot more, obviously, because it would just be strictly better. But is what it is. Do I want to Daze this and just really mess with their mana? I don't think so. A Grafdigger's Cage. That's a pretty exciting one. I'll play out this land. And I will play out this cage. What can we put in the graveyard? Another land. Okay. We will attack our 1-1 into their 0-1. So we've turned off Natural Order and Green Sun Zenith now. So the 2 best cards in our opponent's deck, basically, are no longer accessible to them. So that's not a bad place for us to be. Are they just going to crash for 1? No. Okay, so this feels like our opponent's going to cast an Endurance, which gives us some use for this Daze, potentially. Oh, an Orcish Bowmasters. That's a very different thing. This is worth counterspelling for sure. Veil of Summer is a card they could have here. We put this into our graveyard. So when this Force of Will resolves, our creature will be a 3-3. Wait, no, why is it not 3-3? Artifact. Okay, no. Yeah. Sorry, we already had the instant. So we had a sorcery for some reason. Okay. Speaking of a sorcery. So we want to crack this first. We're not going to play any green 1-drops, but we want to have access to green mana. On this turn, we're not playing green 1-drops, but we are playing Uro. So if we put the Uro in the bin, it's going to fuel some other stuff, and we can't cast it under the Grafdigger's Cage, but that's fine. It's a creature, so it's going to get us Delirium. We're also already going to get Delirium off the sorcery. Okay, the Taiga can go to the bottom, and Unholy Heat can put on top of our library. And we'll draw that one. We bash for 3, and then we can hold this up for something spooky. We don't need to worry about the natural order, so we don't need to kill this Ignoble Hyrax, so they can't natural order, because Grafdigger's Cage already has that covered. I don't think we're supposed to board out our Uros just if we're boarding in one Grafdigger's Cage. I think Uros can be a really useful card in this matchup. And we're not always going to have the cage, or the cage can get destroyed or whatever. And if we have the front side of an Uro, we can still just, cast it as a cantrip. It's reasonable. It still does things. And then if we don't get to use the backside, it's still an easy way of putting a creature into the graveyard for delirium purposes. Alright, Dryad Arbor from our opponent. What next? An Elvish Reclaimer. Okay, so we can blast this with an Unholy Heat in a sec. The question is this more important to blast than saving this for something like a... We could save this for an Endurance, or we could save it for a Fiend Artisan. But the Reclaimer is just so strong right now. We don't want this to be like just getting up Duke of Bog and stripping our graveyard away. I think this is right to do. What we got here? A Once Upon a Time, sure. We knew they had that from earlier. A Cradle, sure. So we get a nice Surveil off here. I do not want this land. We want business. Get rid of the Reclaimer. Let's try and draw some business, please. That's business. Doubles our clock. Makes all of our instants and sorceries, or non-creature spells rather, into kind of like mini ponders, which is pretty exciting to me. Right. So we need to kind of not get jumped by an Endurance. Right, there's the Cradle that we saw them get earlier. I have to imagine there's either a Natural Order or a Green Sun Zenith in our opponent's hand by this stage of the game. They've gone through a quarter of their deck, and they've got 8 of those effects. Okay, Scavenging Ooze is not great for us. So what can they take out here? Yeah, they can easily take us off of Delirium. So we need to answer this. That is no good here. These both have to attack, so I don't really have a choice here. So these are going to attack. Our opponent's going to eat some stuff from our graveyard, and then we're going to get gobbled up. Yeah, these Cradle control decks are pretty strong against the old Delver decks, as a general rule. That doesn't mean Delver decks can't beat them or whatever. We do have some really useful tools. Alright. I'm just gaining some life so far. They're going to start whittling away our board. Oh, so what can they get rid of here? They can get rid of the Preordain, yep, and that will shrink our guys. And then they can eat 1 or 2 of our guys, depending on if they want to put the Dryad Arbor under the bus. I don't think they do. I think they just take the 1 and eat a free guy. And yeah. Unholy Heat no longer kills the Scavenging Ooze because they can just remove enough stuff in response. Okay, they are just trading off all the things. They're going to eat something else while they're at it. Yeah, we don't have great tools to get back into this one now. Our opponent's still got 2 cards in their grip. Yeah, so they're taking out the instants and sorcery so that we can't have an Unholy Heat that does 6 damage. And they've also can just remove, 2 more creatures as well? Or 4 more creatures, yeah. So there's no way we're ever going to kill the Scavenging Ooze. How do we beat the Scavenging Ooze in that case? We could bounce it and maybe counter on the way back down. That's probably one of our options, but this Force of Negation looks pretty terrible right now. So this is the sort of matchup where you want more burn spells. You want your Rough and Tumbles and things, but we just don't have access to that. I think I'd rather have that than the Maddening Hex in our sideboard as a general rule. Format's relatively creature heavy. Rough and Tumble also kills opposing Orcish Bowmasters, which is kind of a big deal. Alright. I'm going to take one more draw step and then decide if this game is over or not. I believe it probably is. Like, they can crack us for half our life total if they want to here. Yeah, looks like they want to do that. They're going to take the creatures out of their own graveyard. No. Okay, so they're only going to hit us for 7, but they can just kill us next turn by removing their own creatures. Alright, nope, they're going in for a little bit of extra damage here. So this is 8 damage. Next turn they can crack in for 9 very easily with what's in play right now. So we've got one more draw step, and then we can scoop it up. Brazen Borrower does buy us some time. A lightning bolt. That's not going to help us out here. Let's scoot that one up. We got absolutely crushed there, which is fair enough. I played this Cradle Control deck, I think yesterday for you lovely people in terms of when the videos went out, and the deck felt pretty strong, so the lack of additional burn spells definitely is hurting us there. Alright, let's go to round 3. We're on the play for round 3. Like, this hand is fine, but it's not the most joy-sparking of hands. We're going to use the Brainstorm. We're a little bit bigger than some other Delver decks, so we don't need a turn 1 threat as much, but I just like to have it. So we probably lead off on Scalding Tarn here, so we can do an emergency Unholy Heat if that becomes the thing we need. If our opponent's on some kind of like Orcish Bowmaster's Echo of Eons LED style deck or whatever. Okay, our opponent is probably on a slow, grindy control deck. That's usually what Prismatic Vista means. Or it could be like Omnitel. I'll play as Tropical Island and we'll hold it up for a Brainstorm on our opponent's turn when we get a better idea of what we're looking for. We're most likely looking for a threat, but we might need to pivot into something else if our opponent is more towards Omnitel. We might want a bit more permission. Alright, a basic plains. A Lorien Revealed, cycle for a... It's going to be just a basic island. Yep, our opponent does not want to play into our Wasteland, so that's what's going to go back with our Brainstorm at least. So we got one card that we're happy to bin. An island, could be some sort of like Stoneblade list, or it could just be... Alright, look at that. Sure, we will let them have this Stoneforge Mystic. Do I think our opponent is playing some kind of... Okay, they got a Cauldron. Do I think they're playing Dazes? That's a question we have to ask ourselves. We're definitely casting this Brainstorm right now. It's a good spot for it. We can throw back the Wasteland and something else. Alright, this is pretty good. We'll throw back the Wasteland. And the Tarmogoyf. No, we have to shuffle now is the only thing, right? So, I really want this third land. We have to shuffle if we want to Unholy Heat right now. The Spell Pierce is likely to be good here. The Daze is kind of good too. Yeah, this is a tough one to decide what we're keeping here. Maybe it's one Unholy Heat. Then if this doesn't resolve, I guess we can Daze to try and make it resolve. Maybe we're supposed to just throw back the land. Keep the second Heat. Okay, the Heat's just worked. That's fine. Alright, now I'm very happy with the plays we made. Oh, a basic island. I will play that one out. In case our opponent is playing Wastelands of their own, I'm going to leave up our Spell Pierce here. And in a way that can't be Wastelanded. So you've got Spell Pierce and Daze to protect this turn. Try and get some Tarmogoyf beats going on. Brainstorm, I don't think this is where we're fighting with our Spell Pierce. It's tempting though, for sure. But we can nail Source to Plowshares quite easily with this Spell Pierce, right? Alright, some more basic lands. This is another Stoneforge. A Prismatic Ending. I would like to say no to this. Ooh, they're willing to force this. Okay. Then I am willing to Daze this. Doesn't really matter which one. Probably bounce the green. More like to cast 2 red spells in one turn. I really didn't want this Tarmogoyf in. Alright. So that makes me think that that was their only removal spell. That's why they fought so heavily over it. Let's Preordain. I don't really want any of these, to be honest. So they both go to the bottom, and we draw another Preordain. We have a fetch land, but we also have this Preordain. But this could be our... I think we're going to hold this for our Force of Will. And we can reappraise the situation next turn. Because if we can just ride this for a few turns, that will be good enough to win the game. So it's got 3 more turns is fine. We'll play the land they know about. So we've got more mystery in our hand. That's slightly worse if we draw a Brainstorm and we want to shuffle away one of those lands. But we're going to want a Tropical Island in play anyway. A Ponder. Sure, that's not worth Force of Willing over, that's for sure. I will Force of Will a Source to Plowshares, a Teferi, that sort of jazz. Narset is an interesting one. I think I probably have to Force of Will an Narset, but they can't cast it with the mana they've got right now anyway. Another Prismatic Ending, I'd Force of Will here. Right, our opponent felt like they were playing it. Okay, is this one that I care about now? Like, we do have some really nice, clean answers to this, but I think we just need to say no to this one. Things can get a little bit out of hand if they stick a Stone Forge and can start Cauldring or Battersculling us. They didn't leave open white mana for any removal spells, so I think my read previously they didn't have any other removal spells was correct. Right, let's get this Bauble going. We've got a fetch land here, so we can use this as a surveil. What do we have here? Alright, we do not want to draw that one. Just get rid of that now. And I think we're on the Volk here. I guess we could have got the basic forest if we're worried about some kind of like back to basics type thing. Alright, so we need a lightning bolt and to not have our creature killed this turn. Right, we drew the thing we shuffled to the bottom anyway. We shuffled from the top anyway, so something Modo Shuffler. So if this is a prismatic ending, that's not great for us, obviously, but we've got Uros and Minsc Boos that are both pretty strong here. Dragon's Channeler isn't the worst either. I'm pretty sure we're delirious. Or, how about we just draw another one? They didn't like the first one. How do you feel about the second? Look at that, Tarmogoyf in 2024, still being a big boy. I remember when Tarmogoyf cost more money than a tropical island. Those are the days. Lion Sash. Okay, so this can start eating stuff, but Tarmogoyf's got so much stuff pumping it up here. They can get rid of Artifact quite easily, but then they're going to have to sink a good chunk of mana into dealing with it. Now, the Channeler is going to be a different problem, because this is one that they can... that's not very nice. That's very mean. So they just get to kill our Tarmogoyf here. Very sad. Yep. Alright, our ability to win this game is looking a little bit less good now. But there's not really any way that we get to play around that, because if our opponent... Like, if we just don't attack our opponent, then the Lion Sash scales up and shrinks our Tarmogoyf. So we are always attacking there. It's just unfortunately had the one card that punches us. But that's life sometimes. It's a Fairy Time Raveler. So they can just get a free bounce off of here, get a card, do some Lion Sash stuff, yeah. So we're looking for Minsc Boo. Like, Minsc Boo feels pretty good on this board. Alright, so taking out our artifact. Now they're going to crunch for just 2 little points damage. But Minsc Boo here is really strong. Can we draw it? No. We can, however, draw 2 pretty reasonable threats, or drop 2 pretty reasonable threats into play. Let's just play another one. So we are a lightning bolt away from killing our opponent. Obviously, they have a Lion Sash and can gain 2 life to put them up to 10. I'm really surprised they haven't tried to prioritize getting this Lion Sash out of lightning bolt range. Alright, so they're showing us a Volcanic Island. This is like the Jeskai control deck that got a few 5-0s recently. I think someone might have top 8'd a challenge with it as well, so it's kind of bubbling up. Actually, no, did someone win a challenge with a Jeskai control deck recently? I can't remember. But yeah, so the deck's kind of doing alright, because loads of white removal, very good against like scam stuff. Oh, our opponent does have a back to basics. A very rude development. Our opponent has been rude to us today. Back to basics, the dress down. Now you can certainly see why the Jeskai deck is... Ooh, that's interesting. Not enjoying what I'm about to do. But I think we have to do this now. Just get some surveils off. So we can find a lightning bolt. I'm bringing it up to 10 though, so we can only hit for 6. And then 7, 8, 9. A brainstorm. Nope. We're looking for something that just gets us over the hump. That would have been great, but back to basics has ruined that one, so that can go in the graveyard too. That is another type though, so it's going to be very hard for them to take us off Delirium, I believe. How many sorceries do we have? 1 sorcery. I take out a creature. I can take out... Okay, maybe it won't be that difficult. Instant sorcery, land, planeswalker. So I imagine they're going to take out the Minsc Boo here. They are. Okay. Goodbye, Lion Sash. So I think we have to kill the Teferi here. Because it's getting pretty close to bounce mode. And that's not going to be very nice. I'll play out a Misty Rainforest. We have this basic island though. And we can go and get a basic forest. So we do have some agency to play this game. Brainstorm from our opponent. So if they want to redeploy the Lion Sash, they're not going to have the most amount of white sources left. Also, they've trapped their own Volcanic Island, and we're probably better at operating on lower land count. Obviously, our opponent's going to have more basics and more lands in their deck anyway. But we can operate relatively well on a low land count. So the back to basics is definitely annoying and shuts off our top end, but we do get to jam some pretty exciting aggro into our opponent with these channelers if we can flip them. Right, they found another Teferi, so we're just going to lose a channeler here. Comes back to hand. We don't have the source to deploy it. Yep. Seems good. Oof, and a plow. Yeah, I think our opponent has... I think that turn is enough. Like, a few of these turns are kind of getting towards having us beat. But that, I think, has... That's interesting. So I want to play this Borrower. Now, we only get to use this land once anyway. Alright. A Taiga. Just deploy... channeler. We still have this forest though that we can go and find. We're kind of incentivized to find so we don't accidentally draw it, but I guess it doesn't matter that much if we do. All right, so there's the Sash. Maybe we're supposed to get the Brazen Borrower down there because at least it beats 4 more. But the problem is, I guess they plus with the Teferi, then we kill the Teferi, but we're not winning the race against the Sash is the only issue there. We're probably not winning the race against the Stoneforge either. So we kind of just need to draw lots of Tarmogoyfs. So it's probably going to go fetch them a Cauldron. No, a Batterskull. Okay, I don't think we're winning this one. I don't think we crack this. A Daze. Yeah, I think our opponent's done just enough there and we'll respect our opponent's time. Okay, so Pyroblast is pretty useful here. Maddening Hex is pretty useful. Carpet Flowers for mana advantage is pretty useful. Force of Negation certainly has some text that I wouldn't mind having on. So, what do we want to do with all these things? I think we want to keep maximum threats. So we're not going to be boarding out any Minsc Boos or Brazen Borrowers. We definitely need the threats. Spell Pierce I think looks pretty good here. Unholy Heats to kill their Stoneforge do feel kind of important. I think we can at least trim 1, possibly 2. I think Preordain is kind of an odd one. Like, we do need the ability to put sorceries in the graveyard. So maybe we are keeping... if we get rid of these... Like, these things are just so good, though. Although, would I rather have a Carpet Flowers than a Lorien Revealed? So if we think of it that way. And that means we get to get Preordain back in. Our opponent is going to be playing around our Dazes a whole bunch here. So I don't think they're actually going to be a very useful thing. So I'm looking at this. The plan is... try and mess our opponent up with Maddening Hex and then protect it with, like, forces. That sort of jam. Alright. Channeler into Mishra's Bauble. This seems fine. This Wasteland is rubbish. Oh, I should have brought out Wasteland, actually. That was a mistake. Although, the thing about decks like our opponents is they're built to not get hit by Wasteland. But whenever they get in a situation where they do get hit by Wasteland, it's absolutely devastating. So this is an awkward one, because we kind of want to be able to kill a Stoneforge Mystic. So I think we kind of are incentivized to put this on top of our library. So our opponent's working with Prismatic Vista, sure. So next time we can drop a Tarmogoyf and then just, you know, get the beats coming. We are potentially going to get Swords to Plowshares here. Yep, okay. They didn't get a basic island, so they're not pondering. Goodbye to our little friend. Let's play a bigger friend. Force of Will. I don't hate that one. Like, we have to play a relatively tempo game here because if we let this game go long, our opponent will win. Alright. We're in with our Tarmogoyf. I will Force of Will to defend this, given the rest of our hand right now. I wish I brought out some Wastelands. Mistake. Should have bought out 1 or 2 of them. Alright. We need to protect our only threat. Has our opponent got a Spell Pierce? They do. Alright, we are just absolutely crushed here. How do we win this game now? Yeah, so this sort of control deck should be picking us apart very easily. And we've got less 1-drops, so we're not going to be doing like the super aggro lines that you can do with Delver, where you just have like a bunch of 1-drops and then you can just ride it to victory. We're a little bit slower, which means we're going to be a little bit weaker against these sorts of decks. And our hand does not look very special right now either. So what are we doing? Like, we've still got some threats to draw. Maybe our opponent doesn't have... Okay, this is the thing we get to at least interact with, so I will take being able to interact. A Battle Skull. So that's one they can cast in a few turns, but we're just going to slide that down so they can't get it into play next turn. Force of Negation. That is something that can destroy our opponent, can counter our opponent's Battle Skull and give us a bit more time in this game to try and draw into something. Also don't have any blue mana here, which is a bit awkward for us. A Lion Sash. That's pretty gross, isn't it? Is that more important than taking out... No, we can draw some burn spells. Right, we need some things to go right for us. And drawing a burn spell would certainly help. Tarmogoyf. I guess we'll play this little puny fella. He's an okay size, but he can be shrunk quite quickly. There's what? 1 sorcery, 1 artifact. So get rid of the artifact and it's shrunk. We can get rid of the Lorien Revealed. And then we'll have a 3/4. They can get rid of the creature and it's a 2/3. So they can have the biggest creature on the board this turn if they want it. Or they can just remove it that way. I don't think we should be fighting over that necessarily when we know there's a Battle Skull coming. How are we supposed to win this one? That is the real mystery of this game. Our opponent's deck is just very, very heavily favoured in this matchup as well. Yeah, I think we can call it. Our time isn't worth spending on this. You're not going to have a good time sat there watching me lose slowly against our opponent's deck. Alright, let's go to round 4. It's kind of like an Island Ponder. I guess I'll keep this one. So, there is some interesting tension here. We are kind of incentivized to crack this, to shuffle before we start putting cards on the bottom, because if it's cards we don't want, we're going to bring them back in the mix. But we also don't want to expose our red source. And we might want to have some Brainstorm action. So I think we are playing a Tropical Island, but let it be known that there's some tension with Fetch Lands and Preordain. A Lightning Bolt is something that could be useful here. Uro less so right now, so I think we'll put this on the bottom for now. And we'll leave this on top. Like, the format at the moment is quite creature heavy. So I think having a Lightning Bolt is a worthwhile tool. Alright, but not in this matchup. Alright, so our opponent... Oh no, Mox Diamond pitching... Oh, our opponent's on some weird stuff. What does this do? Sacrifice, destroy target, non-basic land opponent controls. That player may search it over for a basic land card and put it on the battlefield. You create a treasure token. Never seen that card before in my life. Okay. Yes, I would like to get our basic forest, our basic island out, please. Interesting. Alright, our opponent is on what looks like a brew. So I don't know what we need here, but I would like some threats. Having more lands against our opponent who seems to be on the land destruction plan is probably a good shout here. We probably don't need all of these lands, so we could probably get rid of 1. And would I rather have a Lorien Revealed or just a fetch land in hand? I don't know if we're going to need the Lightning Bolt, because I don't know what's in our opponent's deck, so we're going to see. We can draw that Lorien Revealed if we want. Hopefully our opponent will give us some information. We can also bounce their Mox Diamond, but they might be like a Marit Lage deck. Experimental Synthesizer. Sure. That's just some card advantage. What are they exiling? A Lightning Bolt. Sure. Would you like to sacrifice treasure to bolt us? Alright, a Ghost Quarter. Alright, that's a free shuffle. I'll take it. But, yeah, our opponent is certainly... Okay, they didn't have a second land. Well, they did have a second land. She was a Ghost Quarter. I don't think we want to bounce the... Do we want to bounce the Mox? I think we need to do something here, right? I want to get something in play before our opponent strips all of our mana. A Brainstorm. Right, I would rather get this Brazen Borrower into play and just sit behind a couple of Force of Wills. And just try and win the game over 7 turns with that. It's not great, but it's fine. Alright, they are Mox Diamonding. What else you got? Another Ghost Quarter. What is this? Demolition Field. Destroy target non-basic land. That can basic land card. Alright, opponent. I understand. Who hurt you is the question. Who hurt you? I'll be honest, I really like what our opponent's doing. I love doing stuff like that. We don't have anything left. And now our opponent knows that all their Ghost Quarters are going to be good. Fire Bolt. We cannot allow this to resolve. We need our threat. A Daze. I don't hate that one. Alright, so we're probably going to have to fire this Lightning Bolt off in response to having another land destroyed, given what our opponent's doing. Alright, nothing is what they're doing. That's good news for us. We may have been better off not playing the Mox Diamond and just doing the Ghost Quarter. But obviously they didn't know that. We fetched 2 basics already. Oh, what is this? A Lightning Bolt on our guy. So we're definitely counterspelling this. Would I rather have a Daze or a Brainstorm? I'd rather have a Brainstorm, truth be told. Well, well, well. Don't really want this. So we draw this one out. And then let's ponder. I would like a land and a Tarmogoyf, please. Which order do we want them though? I think we want the Tarmogoyf more than we want the land, even though we could potentially lose some land here. But if we don't have a threat, we're definitely not winning the game. Cleansing Wildfire. Its controller may search the library for a basic land card. Alright. Well, Tarmogoyf should be very good against our opponent's red removal. I like our opponent's deck. Alright, we drew the thing that we had on top anyway. Classic. Hold on, let's see what lands we have to fetch, because we're getting through them. Alright, let's cast a Tarmogoyf. Let's cast a Channeler. Alright, we've got 7 power in play. Our opponent's got 1 card in hand, so they did a good job of hitting our lands. But now, we still have a bunch of lands in play, and we have a lot of power. It's going to be very hard for a mono-red deck to interact with. Sure, be my guest, you can Cleansing Wildfire us. It's no longer about mana anymore. It's about whether or not they can answer our creatures. They do have a Firebolt for later on. Alright, this is a pretty good draw. This means that we have lethal next turn. They could make us experimental synthesizer token if they want to. That's what they're doing. Found a mountain. They got the Samurai. I think we are just blowing up the Samurai anyway. Get this Surveil going. Ponder. Sure, that's probably above average. Let's just find another Lightning Bolt. Into the graveyard. We're just looking for a Lightning Bolt this turn. Alrighty. Alright. I'm going to scooping it up. So, land destruction. Bit rude, but what are we supposed to do about that? I don't really know. I don't mind these meltdowns. I think this Hydroblast looks good. How is our opponent winning the game? Is it like Urza's Saga? Is it just like experimental synthesizer stuff? I don't know. Daze to protect ourselves is probably going to be quite useful. So I can keep that. Haven't really shown us anything, so I'm not sure if we need these Unholy Heats. I think the meltdowns are just going to be better. I don't think we want these high CMC spells. So they can go, and that gives us access to a couple of Force of Negations, then we can maybe just keep 1 Unholy Heat in here. We could keep the Maddening Hex in. If we get a Maddening Hex down, our opponent won't be able to answer it. That's kind of interesting. And that can just be another threat that we can just put into play and just say, look, let's hope this does enough. I don't hate that. I don't like it, but I don't hate it either. We could bring in Surgical and try and take out one of their like Ghost Quarters or something, but our opponent's got so many of these things. I would normally keep this one lander, but our opponent has definitely scared me a little. But we're on the draw, so I will keep this. We might be doing a turn 1 Brainstorm. A Mox Diamond. An Experimental Synthesizer. That's not the one we want to be counterspelling. A Mountain. Sure. They play the Mountain. What other weird and wonderful things are we going to see here? A Soul Guide Lantern. Like, it's annoying, but we're not as invested in the graveyard as some Delver decks are. We're not trying to Murktide up and stuff. Okay, so play this one out. Play this ball. We don't really want to draw the basic, to be honest, because our opponent seems to be destroying some stuff. What does this Bauble do? A Borrower. Do I want to draw a Borrower or not? We can bounce their Mox Diamond. It's kind of a threat. It's not very exciting. But we do expose ourselves if we... I think we are drawing it. Don't really want to expose myself to land destruction this turn if I can avoid it. I guess we have the Daze, which we could maybe do something with. Field of Ruin. Ratchet Bomb. Do we care about Ratchet Bomb? I don't think so. Mishra's research desk, sure. Okay, I think we're going to brainstorm end of turn for some velocity here. I think we're going to get this volcanic. Cast this brainstorm. Channeler and some other stuff is pretty tasty. Put back this brainstorm. Let's ponder. So you can make a 3/3 channeler here. So I think we just get another volcanic here. Cast a ponder. Force of Negation. I don't think that's what we're about right now. Let's go into the graveyard. Borrower, Bauble. I don't really want this Borrower, but I do want the Misty Rainforest, I think. So if we put the Bauble, then... So we put this on the bottom, then the Borrower, then the Bauble. Say no. We play this, mill the Borrower, and then we can draw that land, which is the thing we very much want to have. What do we got over there, opponent? A mountain. Okay, that doesn't sound very exciting. So, if they blow Ratchet Bomb on 1, I don't really care. If they put Ratchet Bomb up to 2 to try and kill a Tarmogoyf, then we can always bounce it and mess with them a little bit. But they'll take out their Soul Guide Lantern as well if they pop this Ratchet Bomb on 1. And their Mishra's Desk, but they can start firing off these Mishra's Desks and get some more. Okay, they're lightning bolting our little friend. So I think our plan is play the Borrower. Alright, so we get a basic here. So we want to play the Borrower and see if they up their Ratchet Bomb. I think we'd rather play non-basics than basics here. I don't necessarily know if it matters too much though. Let's get Taiga. That seems fine for where we're at here. And the plan here is to borrow our opponent and see if they want to... So I think they're going to put a counter on Ratchet Bomb here. What do they get? A Ghost Quarter and an Unholy Heat. That makes our Brazen Borrower look a lot less exciting. Another Soul Guide Lantern. Sure. Poor Tarmogoyf. Right, they're unearthing their Mishra's research desk. They've still got an Unholy Heat kicking around over there. And they can play this until end of turn, isn't it? Until the end of your next turn. So it's not the beginning of the end steps, it's the actual end of next turn. So we don't want to play this guy because that would just kill it with the Unholy Heat that is just saved up over there. Okay, so we can play out this. We can play out this Channeler and pass. I would like to draw a card off their Soul Guide Lantern. Sure. I'm going to play this Demolishing Field. There it is. This is just a strip mine. Costs 2 mana to use it, right? Right, blue. We don't have any more basics. And our opponent knows that because they saw the same amount of basics in the previous game. Right, let's diversify the CMC of our threats. This Daze is just going to get pitched to Force of Will at some point. They can use the Soul Guide Lantern to turn our Dragon's Rage Channel into a 1/1 after it's attacked. And just gobble it up with an Experimental Synthesizer token. Interesting deck. Certainly going to annoy a bunch of people. I think we're just going to fire this off now. Like, that's kind of how they seem to be getting the... Oh, I very much like to have it on top of my library. So this seems to be how our opponent is getting the game won, is just by like drawing a bunch of stuff. Alright, so this Firebolt goes there. Interesting. Right, so attack with this Channeler. I'll play one Tarmogoyf out, because we might not get an option to play both out in one turn. Yep, so they're going to charge us up so they can kill the Tarmogoyf, but then we can play the other one after they blow this one up. And our opponent is down to not that many resources. They do have a redraw with the Experimental Synthesizer. Hardcasting the Firebolt. They're going to crack the Soul Guide Lantern here. Alright, so it's our Tarmogoyf versus their Experimental Synthesizer now, which is reasonable. We've also got Ponder to boot. We need to check how many fetchables we have left. 1 Volcanic Island, 1 Taiga. There's no Trops there yet. Okay, so we're fine with that. So we probably want to crack this first anyway. Get a Trop. Play a Tarmogoyf. Start pondering. Dragon's Rage Channeler is no longer good, right? We've lost Volcanic Island, Taiga. So we have to go any order because Dragon's Rage Channeler is not a threat anymore. Tarmogoyf, though, that is the best threat in our deck. So our opponent is unlikely to double Wasteland us this turn. Or strip mine us, even. Right, they're sacrificing the Synthesizer. They've got a research desk. Pretty good. Demolition Field. You carry on. We get to play another Tarmogoyf though. So as long as they don't have more Ratchet Bombs to ruin our day, we'll be alright. Unholy Heat. That can kill our Tarmogoyf, right? Lightning Bolt. No, it can't kill our Tarmogoyf, right? They need two... they need Delirium, don't they, actually? So they got Land, Artifact, Instant. Land, Artifact, Instant. Land, Artifact, Instant. Yeah, so the Unholy Heat won't kill our guy. That's pretty good. We'll attack with our Tarmogoyf. It's more important to get his Tarmogoyf down than Brainstorm. We could Brainstorm and hit a land, but if we Brainstorm and miss, then we're absolutely screwed. So let's just have 10 power in play and hope that we can get there with these boys. Tarmogoyf actually doing the job. Cantripping Strip Mine over there. Or not Sinkhole, I suppose it is. And they're unearthing their Mishra's Research Desk. I like our opponent's deck. It's kind of interesting. I don't know how good it is, but I appreciate doing something griefy and grindy. Alright. So we do get to Brainstorm if we want to. But I don't think we Brainstorm now. We play this land and we Brainstorm in our opponent's end step. Things like Lightning Bolt for a little bit of additional damage, whatever. If you get a Lightning Bolt... Okay, no, we can't cast any red spells, so we don't want a Lightning Bolt. I guess we could Daze something, but our opponent's got a million mountains over there, so that's not going to work. Alright. We close the match out 2-0. Our opponent's deck is kind of interesting, but Tarmogoyf really showed its stuff here. Something like Murktide might not have been able to do what Tarmogoyf did this game, which I think is really important to note. Okay, let's go to round 5. We are currently 2-2, so let's see if we can get the positive record. Alright, on the play for the final round, we've got a threat, we've got some other stuff. This seems fine. Probably begin with a Scalding Tarn, so we can't be wastelanded off of our Tarmogoyf. Just jamming a Tarmogoyf into red removal spells is a little bit concerning, but we'll see what our opponent's up to. Alright, if our opponent casts a Ponder or something this turn, that would actually help us out. A Wasteland. Okay, that doesn't impact us too much here. So we could just play on basics here and just play a small Tarmogoyf. Oh wait, can't play it off that, can we? Well, that was a mistake. We couldn't get both basics there, could we? Whoops. Alright, in comes the Tarmogoyf. It's only a lowly 1-2, but if they Lightning Bolt it, it becomes 2-3. But we have a Daze. Troll of Khazad-dûm. Okay, so we're looking at Re-Scaminator. Our Tarmogoyf got bigger, so I don't think I have to worry about red removal anymore. There could be blue, red-black scam, but no, they got the Underground Sea. They would like to reanimate. Would I like this reanimate to hit us? Not really, but we can just Brazen Borrower with that. And we have a Daze of our own to try and get this working out. Okay, so let's Petty Theft this. Let's crack for 2. So basically we got to use their reanimate as a 6 damage spell to their dome. Pretty good. We've still got this Force of Will and this Daze kicking around. Got an Unholy Heat, which isn't going to deal anything resembling enough damage to kill a troll just yet. Another Wasteland, so I wish we'd have got non-basics before. Okay, they're just Swamp Cycling here, that's good. So what are they going to get here? Probably the Surveil land? Nope, an Underground Sea. Okay, so we might be looking at... Okay, they've got another Reanimate. Kind of would like to counterspell this. Am I getting rid of the Brainstorm here or the Daze? That's a tough call. We know they've got an Underground Sea in hand. Alright, I'm gonna Force of Will this one. Alright, Preordain. Let's get you Preordaining. Dragon's Rage Channeler, Unholy Heat. I want all of these. So I think we put this one down first, and then this one. I have a horrible feeling I just misclicked the land to the bottom rather than on top there. Alright, Dragon's Rage Channeler. You are a 1-1, but we only need one type in the graveyard. Animate Dead. Do we want to Daze this? That gives us a Surveil look. Stops the Wasteland from hitting us. I think I do want to Daze this. I believe our opponent will pay here. There it is. So that means we're not getting Wastelanded. So that means Brazen Borrower's alive as a draw here. Right, so they've got a 5-5. A Lightning Bolt. What are we doing with this Lightning Bolt? If we point this Lightning Bolt at our opponent's face, that's kind of interesting. We don't have Delirium yet. If we Lightning Bolt, we might get Delirium, which will then make our Tarmogoyf for 4/5. We could do like a weird thing of like hitting our own channeler. I think we are bolting our opponent's face here and seeing if we can get Delirium. That does not look like Delirium to me. Alright, I'm kind of worried about this Wasteland now. We can force through 1 point of damage. I don't think that's worth it. So we want to... We could block with our channeler and pump our Tarmogoyf. Something like a Mishra's Bauble would be excellent here. Just pump both our guys. Turn on Unholy Heat. But the Wasteland on our Taiga here is going to be pretty brutal. And I don't see why our opponent wouldn't do it. Like, it's not like they need that mana to cast a Grief this turn. We could see a Murktide or something here. Our opponent is probably on Rescaminator because they got the Animate dead. So they're less likely to have Murktides in the main deck. Yeah, if we'd have not fetched our basic island early on, we'd be in a slightly better position, I think. We have access to red mana here. Can this troll attack? I don't believe it can. But our opponent's got a full grip of cards over there. Oh, Wasteland. That doesn't really do anything here. Pass. Orcish Bowmasters. Yep, that's going to take our channeler. So we have the option available to us of attacking with both of our guys, and then they block one, then our channeler becomes bigger, but then if they have something like a Bowmasters, we just absolutely boned. Alright, are they going to start attacking with a troll now? They would like to grief us. Pitching Whale of the Forgotten. So we're going to lose our Unholy Heat. Yeah, it is what it is. We can't cast it. If we'd have fetched Volcanic instead of this basic island, we would have been able to. Entomb, have they got a Reanimate for something big? If so, then we can press the scoop button. They have an Animate dead. Sure, we're not beating that. Okay, we gave it a good go there, but didn't quite come together. So we're going to want some graveyard hate. So Grafdigger's Cage and Surgical Extraction, please. I still like some of our like Daze type interaction. That looks good to me. I do like Uro here quite a lot, because what Uro gives us is the ability to get traded 1-for-1 a bunch and then just kind of explode out with something big afterwards. Carpet Flower is obviously very good against what our opponent's putting down. Unholy Heats. These are one of the few things we have that can kill a troll. So that's worth thinking about. I think I want to cut some cantrips because Orcish Bowmaster is a thing, so we can't cut any of our burn spells either. Which means I think we're probably cutting another couple of ponders here. Put these things in. That means our sorcery count is a bit low, but we've added some enchantments and stuff too. Alright, we'll give this a whirl. We could play Pyroblasts, but their threats tend to be black, so I don't actually like Pyroblasts that much. Like, we can fight over some of their counter spells, but that doesn't feel amazing. Like, even their sideboard threats are usually things like Deathly Voidwalker and stuff, so that's not going to help us there either. So I'd rather just have these things. Daze versus Force of Negation is an interesting one here, but considering they're going to be attacking our hand and depriving us of resources, I think Daze is more likely to end up preferable for us. Alright, so we're on the play. We can make a guy, or we can make a Grafdigger's Cage. I think we make the guy first, because they're not going to reanimate anything on turn 1. But they can discard us, I guess, is the issue. So maybe we just shut down the reanimate stuff right now. Wasteland is going to be an issue for us. But they usually run 3 Wastelands. Alright, not a Wasteland. Alright, that's good. I don't think we're firing off a Brainstorm here, although... Okay, we definitely don't need to fire off a Brainstorm right now. Play this one out. Play out our little friend. We have a Brainstorm that we can fire off when we want to. And we'll pass. So I think we've got a good setup for this game. We've got some nice aggressive threats. We've shut down the scary thing our opponent can do. We've got some removal for things like Bowmasters, which is kind of the next scariest thing they can do. So, not a bad situation. A Brainstorm from our opponent. We will allow that one. Might try and dig into anything with our Brainstorm. So this means there's going to be no Orcish Bowmasters on our turn, because these decks don't run anything like Dark Ritual or whatever. And a Ponder. Sure. So our opponent's going to have to try and find a different line to victory rather than just reanimating some big critters. Okay. So now it's over to us. Tarmogoyf, don't mind that for later on, but right now we just want to be getting these little guys going. I will fire off this Brainstorm. Let's see if we can find another land. We have found another land, but do we actually want this right now? I wouldn't mind having the land, but I think finding 3... Okay, yep, so let's just keep funneling these. I guess that's 2 surveils, but putting in the graveyard is kind of different because we don't know if this Brainstorm is going to resolve. Oh, it did resolve. All right, so we've got Daze. That's pretty tasty. We have this Minsc Boo we'd like to keep around for later. And I guess we put the Tarmogoyf away so it can't be, like, removed. Because we don't know if we're going to Daze anything on this turn cycle. Because if we Daze and mill either the Goyf or the Minsc Boo, we get access to 3/3 channelers. So there is an argument for keeping these, for putting them the other way around. But if our opponent doesn't play anything, we'd probably rather have the Tarmogoyf for the most part, I think, here. Because we're going to overload our opponent's very low amount of removal in their deck. Okay, let's cycle in the Troll. Now, they might have Borrowers, which can get rid of the cage and give them a turn to play some big guys. But that's a multi-step process. Right, a Dalthy Voidwalker. We do not need to do that because we've got some just clean red removal for this guy. Alright, so now we can lightning bolt this guy. And we get to mill the Minsc Boo. Tropical Island as well. I guess the downside here is we don't get to flip these guys now. If they counterspell this guy, then they do flip these guys. A 6/7 Tarmogoyf. Now that is pod racing. A Force of Will. Right, I will bounce our red source here. Let's get some more surveils. A lightning bolt. I don't think we need that right now. We're just trying to flip these guys. Another lightning bolt. Alright. A second Force of Will. Wowzers trousers. That is a lot of value we're getting there. And it turns our guys into bigger guys. It's pretty nice. I think we will play this out so we have the access to our Unholy Heat. But we are looking pretty strong here. Like, our opponent's scariest things are things that don't get to happen anymore. And we've just got a lot of damage coming their way. Now, we could have kept the lightning bolt just so we had a kill next turn. What are you going to play, opponent? A Murktide Regent. How big is this? 5 cards have entered the scary zone. Okay, so there's a Wasteland. That is really awkward for us. That is the downside of playing out that Unholy Heat, thing. Yeah, we've definitely been punished on that one. So these guys have to attack, so we don't have a choice here. So our opponent goes to 6, and then we get to make a big guy that hopefully can clean it up. Alright, opponent. They can't swing with the Murktide unless they've got some removal, and even then it's a little bit sketchy still. But if we'd have kept our Volcanic Island in hand for the Unholy Heat, we would have been able to kill their Murktide last turn. So that would have been a lot better, although we wouldn't have been able to cast our Tarmogoyf, because they probably would have just hit our Tropical Island instead. So, kind of different ways that things get played around. Alright. So, we have to attack with both of our guys here, because this guy has to attack anyway, and I'd rather force through some damage than no damage. This leaves them dead to Lightning Bolt. I think we hit their Undercity Sewers here, so they can't bounce it and get some more value down the line. And this also stops them hard casting a Grief next turn. Alright, so we're going to get... we're going to have to tack into this guy. Right, so they are evoking the Grief. So they're going to take our Unholy Heat. A Carpet of Flowers. We're going to cast this first, so we at least get our Surveil off before our opponent starts gobbling our creatures up. Misty Rainforest is the red source we require, but we're going to rely on the Carpet to do the red mana for us. Alright, so in comes the Channeler, right into the big gob of a massive scary dragon. So we will not use the Carpet Flowers ability, there's no point. Although an interesting thing to note is Carpet Flowers will trigger committing a crime every turn for the new set when that comes out, so keep that in mind. Alright, we've got a Ponder coming in. They're going to start crunching here. But we've already shed through a couple of Lightning Bolts. Is there one in exile as well? There is one in exile. So we have one Lightning Bolt left. Tarmogoyf is big, but not big enough to tackle the Murktide Regent. If we had our own Murktide Regents, we could make an 8/8, and that would probably be pretty good. Make an 8/8 here. Yes, we could. Yeah, we got loads of cards in the graveyard. I think we might be approaching the end of this league. It's going to be hard for us to win this one, but a lightning bolt off the top can do it. We have one of those within 39 cards. Outside of that, a Maddening Hex kind of stops our opponent casting spells, but they have a threat on board. So we need to follow that up with something like a Brazen Borrower. So things are awkward for sure. Come on, deck. What do you got for us? A Daze. That does nothing here. All right. So this is weirdly one of the situations where the sideboard Murktide plan out of the Rescaminator deck actually works. In my opinion, I don't really like the Murktide because a lot of the graveyard hate is things like Endurances and Soulguide Lanterns and stuff. But when it's Grafdigger's Cage, then the Murktide looks fine because you've got loads of cards in your bin. All right, we're going to be put down to 5 life total. Not a very high life total at all. An Uro. Okay. We only get to cast the front side of this, which is awkward. We'll say yes to this. And we have 1 green source and 2 blue. So if we add 2 green mana here, let's cast this. This is going to look pretty silly underneath our own cage, but all right, we got nothing. That's the end of that one. Okay, so that's the end of the game, end of the match, and the end of the league. We finish with a not very impressive 2-3. Let's take a quick look at the matches as well. So 0-2, 2-0, 0-2, 0-2, 2-0. So it was very polarizing one way or the other. Let's talk about the deck. So by going bigger, we are kind of exposing ourselves to some disruption that our opponent can have, and we are not very good at racing. So decks where they've got like a pretty solid mid-range plan, where you're better off going underneath them than trying to contest them, we're going to struggle with a little bit. And that's kind of what happened. We got crushed by the Fiend Artisan deck a lot, and the Scam deck was able to do more powerful things, and we weren't able to race that because we were too slow. So that is definitely a consideration that I would have here. What I will say is Tarmogoyf looked very good this league. It was big, it was cheap, it was hard to interact with, it was easy for us to play it. Big fan of Tarmogoyf, it really worked. But I'm not really sure that putting 4-drop spells into our Delver deck is where I want to be. So this is not going to get the seal of approval from me at the moment. We've also got a lot of cantrips here. And I think because Rug doesn't have access to like concrete answer stuff, it's not like we can like Molten Collapse something scary or whatever later on. We kind of have to like go bigger than it. And that's not always easy to do when the thing you're trying to go bigger than is like a Murktide Regent. Now, Uro can kind of do that sometimes. But Uro sometimes can't attack into a Murktide Regent. Minsc Boo, on the other hand, definitely can outpace a Murktide, but not always again. So I'm not really convinced what this is improving for us. I think some of these grindier matchups, maybe it can help in, but I'm not wholly convinced. I think maybe Grixis Delver is where we're looking a little bit better because we can sort of trade resources and then just gas up with this Uro because we're doing a similar plan, but we're going a little bit bigger than them. But a lot of the other decks in the format that play all like, you know, a bunch of cantrips and low to the ground stuff, you know, like Scam or whatever, they have a different plan of like making some giant monsters, which instead of like a thing that we go bigger than, it's just their thing is just bigger because it's more combo-y. So we kind of fail on that front, I think. So this one doesn't really get a pass from me, but it does make me want to play more Tarmogoyfs. I think if you want to play Rug, I think going low to the ground is where you want to be. So you get your Channelers, get your Delvers, have some Tarmogoyfs, then start disrupting your opponent and beat them down. That's what Rug does best, in my opinion. And Stifle is actually good in the format right now. Like, you know, it's not an amazing card because, you know, it's still Stifle, but it has quite a lot of relevant text on these days. You know, Stifle in a Leyline Binding is really, really good and can completely swing a game. Stifling the One Ring trigger so that they don't get protection, so you can crunch for a whole bunch. You know, there's lots of stuff that you can do with Stifle right now that I think playing good old-fashioned Canadian Threshold, which obviously I'm biased because it's a deck I used to play like, let's say 12 years ago, maybe more. I don't know. Whenever it was like the deck back in the day, I used to play Canadian Threshold. That's the flavour of Delver that I'm most comfortable playing. So, of course, I'm going to say that's something that you should be trying. But I think that leans into the strengths of what this colour combination gives us. And I don't think we necessarily have the right tools to be trying to go like a little bit bigger than some of these mid-range decks. Or like, you know, like tempo-y decks like Delver and things. I think we're better off, you know, let's have some good efficient 1-drops. Let's have some Tarmogoyf, and then let's disrupt our opponent. So it was a fun experiment, and I do like trying new stuff out. When I see a deck that looks a bit odd, I'm definitely going to give it a whirl, and this one did seem an interesting take on Delver, but I don't think it's quite there. Obviously, we're running powerful cards. You can see how this 5-0'd a league, because, you know, it's just a bunch of good cards, really. But I think at the end of the day, over the course of, you know, 100 matches, you're going to find that this build is just weaker than other things you can do with Delver decks. Obviously, we're not running Delver, but you know what I mean, with like the tempo decks, and especially in this color. Like the main sort of rug Delver deck right now is a blue-red deck that only splashes for the backside of Questing Druid. So not really full-on rug, to be honest. So if you want to play full-on rug, then by all means, steal up your Tarmogoyfs and get your Stifles going. And I'll probably play that again soon because it's a deck I like to play every now and then because it is really good fun. But that's our Delver deck for the week, I think. And I hope you enjoyed this one. Remember to like and subscribe. It really does help the channel out. And goodbye. If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget turbo depths as well as 3 tiers of support. A low-cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel. A mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed turbo depths guide that is updated every month as well as regular articles. And lastly, the higher tier gives you all of the above as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.